Okay, very good. This is a picture. How many of you seen this last winter? Yeah. This is actually January 11th. I took the picture on the left-hand side. This is a soybean field. I guess we're probably got a barrel. Pointer. This is a soybean field here that's been ripped. Okay. That was after a 1 day of wind. We had about 30 or 40 mile-an-hour wind, very little snow, and so it blew a lot of that dirt. I didn't even want to call this. We usually call this snert, combination between dirt and snow, but it was mainly dirt. And I remember growing up, it was accepted. It was accepted to see dirt in the ditch in the winter. Because actually that was a sign of a good farmer in my area. You know why? We got our fall plowing done. That was a sign of a good farmer. If you got all your fall plowing done, that was a sign that you were good. Right? I'm getting some smiles. This is where I'm located. I'm located in north central Iowa. We are almost halfway exactly between Minneapolis and Des Moines. We are approximately 20 miles from the Minnesota border. Interstate 35 comes straight down here to Des Moines. We're right on the edge of two different landforms in Iowa. Many of you probably heard about the Des Moines Lobe. How many of you have ever heard about our Des Moines water lawsuit that we had a few years ago? And that all pertains to this area here. The Des Moines Lobe goes up into the Minnesota area very, very quite a ways. It goes in that Red River Valley, that all comes this way. But here I am right here. Flat black. This stuff does not work. Sometimes I go into a meeting or a field day and I say, what are you guys using here for? Because it's not supposed to work here. Have you ever heard that? It doesn't work on my farm? Yeah, I hear it all the time. I still hear it. And so I go through the history of what we're doing. It's been over 20 years since I started some of these practices, and I still have a neighbor. He still no more plows all his corn trucks going to soybeans. He's a very good friend, comes into my office maybe once a week. He always likes coming for coffee. And he keeps telling me, I'm watching you, Dean. I want to see if this works. Don't you think after 20 years, if it didn't work, I'd do something different? But we're going to talk, I want to get on this point at the end of the presentation on how we think, how we don't like change, or how we resist change, and how we make change happen. As an introduction that Dana said, I want to say, I feel very humbled, very privileged to be here. I actually was probably their second choice. I didn't want to say that, but hopefully I don't disappoint you. But actually, I have a friend, and he's very active in the Iowa Soybean Association, American Soybean Association. He's been a pusher of these conservation practices for a long time. By the name of Wayne Fredericks. And Wayne, I think, focused one of your Watersheds meetings or something in southern Wisconsin, I think. And they got to know him and they wanted him to come back. But he was going to put him on a knee and just got a knee replaced a couple months ago. And he wasn't going to be able to come. So somehow he gave me or gave them my name. That's why I'm here. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about what we have done in the past and where we started. As Dana said, I'm on a 4th generation century farm. I grew up plowing. I'll give you a little hint on what happened. I broke my leg. I rolled my knee in my sophomore year playing football. At that time, we were still picking ear corn. Some of you young people might not know what ear corn picker looks like. But anyway, I was useless to that operation. I could not unload wagons. I couldn't crawl cribs. So they put me on the plow. Every day after school, I would come home and plow until midnight. And come back again after school the next day and plow until midnight. I remember one night my dad could from the field, might have been the next morning, but he didn't usually stay up that late. But he said, Lee, you need to adjust the cover board on the third bottom because you're not covering all the stalks. How many of you know what cover board is? There was not supposed to be a single piece of residue. At that time, we called it trash. Do you remember that? Corn residue was trash. If you don't know anything, if you don't take anything else away from what I tell you today, residue is good. Trash is bad. We turn the trash into residue, which is good. It's just like soil and dirt. Dirt is what we have on our shoes, on the floor. Soil is what we have on our fields. A living, growing organisms. I was talking to a couple of gentlemen last night. We have organs, a teaspoon of soil we do, human beings on the earth. A teaspoon of soil is that active and that full of organisms. Wow, get to start preaching, we're going to take a lot of time. Anyway, just to show you where I started from, full bore plow, guys. We plowed soybean stubble. Have you ever done that? Yeah, that is admitting. That's okay to admit to that. Because I do not fault any of my ancestors for doing what they did. Because that was the only way they could produce a crop. Okay? We didn't, I still remember the shoe planters. How many of you remember that? How much trash could that handle? Not very much, could it? So we had to get everything buried, incorporated. But in the middle 90s, I had a farm that I would have to bring really high clay content. I would have to replant 8 out of 10 years, about 30% of that farm, no matter how dry it was when I worked in the spring. I went to a agronomy meeting in Ames, Iowa in the fall of 97, I think it was. And here was a guy from Ohio. He was doing this strip tilling thing. He said, I don't work my ground in the spring, I strip till the fall, I just plant on top of it in the spring. And he said, the biggest benefit of this is that I don't ruin the soil tilth in the spring. I thought, wow, like I am sort of stubborn, slow Norwegian. But a light bulb went off and I said, well, maybe this could solve my problem. Because I was having this extreme replanting situation year. I didn't want to admit to people that I was doing it because of conservation efforts, because I wasn't, because I did not want to become a conservationist. I'm sorry, I didn't want to be a conservationist because I had this stereotype in my head of this long-haired with an Australian hat, khaki shorts and khaki shirt. Oh, I'm almost good. I got a khaki shirt, but with mountain boots. Anybody have a stereotype of a conservation that way? I did. Why was I stupid? Ignorant. Because it made me feel I wasn't quite what I was supposed to be if I was called a conservationist. So this is one of the practices that we started. So I actually started with a hydro spar with covering this. Didn't even worry about placing fertility at all on the band underneath the strip. Just trying to figure out if this tillage practice would work. And I was hooked after the first year. I had never planted into a seed bed that was so spectacular as I did that next spring. And then after that, I was probably only, now it solved the problem totally. I still only have to replant maybe 1 every 10 years. And maybe only about 5% of the farm. The really extremely tight farms. So I thought, well, that's what we're gonna go from then on. And then I started getting neighbors who started seeing what was happening, what we were doing. And I actually went in partnership with one farmer, one neighbor. We built a rig, we put it together. We started putting the fertility down, and we went full bore. And we ended up developing a cover crop business, which I just sold last summer. We ran it from 2004 to 21. We went from my measly 600 acres of strip tilling to we were doing over 10,000 acres a year in strip and custom stripping. Now, if you equate that out, that's about 350 to 400 hours of tractor seat strip tilling. When we have in our latitude, we have a very short fall. So some years we didn't do a lot in the fall. If you look at this picture, we got so high tech. If they tell you we can't BRT in strip till, they're wrong. This machine right here is BRT, P and K, so MAP or DAP, what you want to use is superphosphate and potash, and actually this is spring applicator 28%. All three of them are BRT. Strip cropping. I didn't know this would be a conservation practice, but I guess they tell me it is. I would always have I'm a Pioneer sales rep, so please don't throw anything at me if you don't want Pioneer or Corteva. But I've been a Pioneer rep since '95. And I always challenge my customers to tell me or ask me to research or to test things. And I had one customer in the mid, I think it was 2005, come up to me and said, would you want to try strip cropping for us? I said, okay, that's fine, I'll do that. I usually, when I try something, when I have trials, it's always a three strikes to ground. So I always do it 3 times before I throw something down. A lot of times it's 3 times before I accept it or do it. And in this practice, it only took me 2 years to figure out this is what I want to do. Because as a Pioneer rep, I was not aggressively looking for the ground. And now I want to do competition with my customers. So they increase our profitability or our income per acre. Strip cropping was a perfect fit. This is kind of what it looks like. It's kind of neat. The worst thing about it is how many of you would like to go down and spray 20 feet at a time? Post. Anybody? It takes a long time to spray 20 feet at a time. But that's what we do. We have a hooded sprayer, we can do that. Most of the time on a burn down, we're running the same herbicide program for both corn and beans. So we can run 60 feet. I talked a little bit about the Pioneer business, and we would always have a test plot of appreciation stuff in the fall. I'm going to pick on Wayne because he's the one who got me stuck got me out here. He asked me one time in the field today, he said, how much nitrogen you putting on, D? I still remember this. He was setting me up pretty good. I told him when we were putting on this plot, he said, oh, that's way too much. That's more than what the extension of what Iowa State tells us to do. And I just looked at him and I said, yeah, Wayne, it's probably more than what you put on, but my yield was a little bit higher. And from then on, I started talking about how many pounds of N per bushel of corn it takes to produce corn. Now I'm talking pounds of what I apply, not necessarily the organic bushel. Always a bushel of corn is going to take so much nitrogen, but it's organic. And now I'm pushing to 0.7 pounds per acre. I see some of you nodding. What's a good number around here? We can throw it out. Iowa State is still telling us 1.1. Are some of you in here at 1.1? Maybe you are. But we're down just around 0.7. We did some 4-row strip cropping when we were messing with this. We were getting that down almost a half a pound per bushel of corn. But anyway, this shows a picture of our strip cropping, and then we're stripping. This is actually spring stripping into that cover. So once again, when we went to cover crops, I guess I must have pushed the button, so too soon. Why did I go into cover crops? I told my wife Cindy that I was going to pick on her a little bit again this morning. I always like to tell this story. We went to the National no-till conference in, I think it was in January or February of 2000, actually 12. No, that was about no-till. Cover crops we started because what Wayne had talked to me about the nitrogen thing. He got me to thinking about maybe I was losing some nitrogen that I could have used in the future. Maybe I was over blind. Really started feeling guilty. Or actually got them maybe a little bit, I want to say, selfish, greedy. I wanted to use the cover crops not for erosion purposes, but for nutrient storage. My cover crops are mini storage facilities for my NPK. Now, if I mismanage my cover crops, I can also mismanage my number or my cash crops because the nutrients will be released at too late of a date. But they are my storage facilities for all my nutrients. Anything that I have excess, I'll carry over to next year. And actually, if you're a little short, we will actually give you some back in the year that you're growing it down. We started out with cover crops in 2012 with about 5 producers in the area. Because we had been kind of working together on the strip tilling and no tilling all the groups, sort of a friendly competition to see who could figure it out faster and better. And so when we got to the cover crop thing, we had a few of us got together. This was the weirdest thing because NR Sales was going to have a program field day. They said they were going to fly this cover crop in the standing crops. They had a pilot there. They said this pilot had been flying fertilizer around down south on rice, tobacco, cotton, and all that. And they actually seeded grass along interstate highways when they were trying to reestablish the grass. And now this new concept was putting this cover crop, Syrah, whatever, oats, whatever, into your standing corn and beans. I thought that was the most idiotic thing I'd ever heard. I spent 30 years trying to keep the weeds out of my corn and soybean fields, and now we're going to fly this stuff in? That is crazy. But you know what? I heard my neighbors say, I think I'm going to try this. This sounds really interesting. So was I going to be left behind? Was I going to be at a disadvantage? No. I didn't do it for that conservation piece again. I thought if I could save some money or save that nitrogen and increase my yield, because that's nothing I'm going to tell you here this morning is, I'm not going to tell you how to reduce your inputs. I'm going to tell you how to increase profit. There's a lot of people that are talking about how you can reduce your inputs, and I would agree with them, but I would rather take that and increase my yields, which in turn increases my profitability as well. So then we got this flying on, and eventually the 5 or 6 people that were working with us said, hey, you're a pioneer rep, why don't you do the seed for us? Because when we first started, we would each show up with a pickup and flatbed with pallet to 50-pound bags of rye, or whatever we're using. We would have to break those bags at the airport, and then actually load the planes at times. I got to be kind of monotonous and kind of not a very efficient way. So we started a business in 2015 called Sponheim Sales Services. What we do is we work with local producers, growers, and proceed, recondition it. We are a one-stop shop. When a farmer comes in and says he wants his North 80 flown out into 56 pounds of rye, we take it from there. I found that business structure worked in the strip till. Make it as easy, and that's one of the keys here for you guys to push your watershed along, is find somebody that is willing to do custom work. Right. Somebody out there needs to step it up to help these people get started, these producers get started, because they're not going to look at all they look at, and they can give you all kinds of reasons. One of them is, I don't want to invest if it doesn't work for me. I used to preach and say, well, let's try it with these new producers. Let's try a few acres here. Let's try to do this. And now at the end of my last slide, I'm sure we're going to change to. But anyway, that's enough on that. Here's my little example of my wife. We went to the no-till conference, like I said, in 2017. I was part of a luncheon thing. We were supposed to talk about strip tilling. But anyway, we went to 2 sessions in the afternoon on one of those days. I don't know what it was. She split up. I went one way, she went another way. And have you ever seen those movies where the woman and the man are running in a grass field or meadow, they run to each other, and they hug and embrace, they love each other, and kiss? She was running, she doesn't say she was running, but she was walking really fast up the hallway at me, just like this. I go, wow, she can hug me. She stops, she puts her finger in my chest. And she says, we're going to no-till. Wow. Did I have any choice at that time? She had just gone to a no-till session. She was all pumped up. This is where we're going to go. And in my mind, we were going to go to the end of our career, strip tilling. That was it. I wasn't even looking at no-tilling. Strip tilling was working so good, so great. She pushed me. Okay, she pushed me into so-called trying. Actually, we figure out how to work it. But this is something, how many of you ever do this? We're pulling into the field, plant corn. Corn, in the variety that's 3 foot, 4 foot tall, slowly headed, actually pollinating, because we had to worry about keeping the radiator and air filters clean. Planting corn into it. My grandfather, my father probably turned in their graves when they saw us doing this. There was no way in heck this was going to happen. Actually, in this field, we had 2 neighbors that came to us and said, hey, you want us to come in and chop that before you go, before you do anything with it? And the worst thing is, we had a field like this the year before that we actually stripped into it. How many of you stripped in a 3 foot ride? Sprinter. With a shank machine. It can be done. I wouldn't recommend it, but it can be done. And then a lot of times in this presentation, I show new people, I want to show the progression where I started. That ride small, then terminated a long time before I'm in there planting it. Fear factor. When we start people, remember where you started. Don't have them start here. It can be done, but have them start here. And as you can see, this one was messing. This was sprayed a little bit before. I wouldn't recommend that. This is what we're doing now. We're finally getting, since I'm not strip tilling for most of the spring, we're actually getting our planting done on time. This is what our coverage usually look like. So then there's this next round of where we are in our operations. My goal is to farm without chemicals. I'm not going organic. Okay? No. I still like commercial fertilizer. I always like it out in case something gets away from me. I mean, herbicide wise, I'm not going to go there, but this has always intrigued me. You know, I've watched video after video of how this crimping should look. But when I started looking at how I did it, how we set it up, how many of you get, I think it's No-Till magazine? Most of you probably did, or a lot of you. There's a segment, if you read about Crimper Roller, they have 5 steps that you should do. I learned that this year. I could have wrote that in an article. Because it was verbatim what I found out. We're going to talk about that. We can talk about that at a different time if we want to. One of the things that we have problems with is our rate wasn't thick enough. We weren't rolling at the right time. I had planted corn and soybeans into this ride normal time because the smooth rollers developed to what? What are these big land rollers used for? They were to stress soybeans so they would yield more. You could roll them up to B2. Oh, wow, we're getting close. And I thought to do the same thing, but in this picture, you'll see what stage is the soybean at. They can tell me. We're still in the unifoliates, we're not even B1 yet. Look at how tall that plant is already. My hand is about 8 inches tall. So by the time this got to be B2, I had a 16-inch tall plant, and I went to Cripper Roller the ride, which was at the right time for the ride. I wiped the beans out. Yeah. As you can see how this Cripper Roller in this really low cover crop, this is like 55 pounds of rye flowing on. It just didn't do anything. This is one where we had actually went into a seed field, one of our actual seed fields of rye. It was planted heavier, we crimp and roll it and plant it afterwards. That worked pretty good, but how many of you want to plant your corn and soybeans in the second week of June? I don't. I really don't. This is another one where the beans have been planted like the week before. As you can see, the little beans coming up in Silicon state. We roll them on top of it. This is the bean field looked like in late July, early August. This did not have any herbicide on it. Awesome, awesome. We have a little volunteer ride, which because I did not kill. This is where we're headed to. I just bought myself a drill. We're going to plug every 4 openings. We're going to need a 15-inch gap. We're going to put 3 rows of rye between each row. We're going to plant the corn and the beans in that gap. We're going to let the rye go to when it needs to be rolled, which will be in the second week of June probably. We should have enough sunlight to keep the beans and corn going healthy. Then we're going to roll it. We don't know whether we'll have to ban herbicide on the rows or not. I think we can get by. My son thinks we're going to have to. But we're going to roll the rye into the corn and soybean rows, not touching the corn and soybeans. That's the plan. All my theories work. They really wanted to get into the numbers, and I'm going to go through real quick. This is my spreadsheet for my 2022 expenses. I might be a little light on the rent, but I don't know my ground, so I put a number in there. We were talking last night, most of our cash rents now in our area around 400 to 500. We had a farm just sold last week for 18,500. It wasn't the best farm. If you look at some of the numbers here, you can see we do some error. Got chicken later on it. The thing I want to talk about is when I talk about figures and where it is for economy, look at these 4 items, and this is what we're going to call first. Burn down. That's of course glyphosate. 2 adjuvants that you have to use in this action. Insecticide. If we have a rye in the field after May 15th, we terminate it. We do have problems with armyworms sometimes, so that's in there just in case we need it. So I use, these are Iowa State custom rates. They always put out a survey every year. So I use those numbers per acre for what's going to cost me to spray plant citrus. So when we talk the numbers the next 4 or 5 slides, everything's coming off of what actual numbers I'm going to have for 2022. This is what scares me. I've never spent over $1,100 like acre for crop expenses. It's really impossible for me to comprehend that. Okay, so what we did, everybody wants numbers. The secretary talked about it. We're going to talk a little bit about how numbers aren't always the same. I mean, don't always tell the whole story. What I did is, all I did was compare conventional tillage and strip tillage. Okay, I had to take a 2-year average because in our area, we have so much tillage done before soybeans. Most of them are disc ripping, field cultivating, then you got fertilizer spreading. Same way in corn, just field cultivating once, fertilizer spreader and nitrogen application. So I have to take the 2 and average them. This is what happens when we do if we strip till for corn and beans. This is an example of if we use strip tillage on both crops. There's some of that being done because the revenue bodies are still saying that we have to have ground till to make things work. We usually transition people into strip tilling everything, and then we start moving into no-till beans. Eventually, hopefully, to no-till corn. But as you can see, we have a difference. It's actually an advantage in conventional tillage. This is the first time since I started doing this, and it was an advantage. The reason why? Can you tell me why? Chemicals. I looked at my 2021 spreadsheet. I'm spending $7 85 cents on per dollar. This year I'm spending $23.22. Almost 3 times the money on per dollar. And that's the only reason that this switched. From the very beginning, this was all working always to the advantage of the strip tillage. We did the same thing, and you can argue these numbers if you want on a different time, and this is what I do, this is what my numbers say. But all I'm doing is comparing the things that are different between the two systems. Here I move into strip till corn and no till beans. As you can see, the difference still is to the conventional tillage, 253, but that's down to that bird down again. Where it gets a little bit better. This is where we finally break that plateau with that 23-22 burn down costs. If we go to all no till, compared to what we were doing, because then I can take out the fertilizer passes because we're going to have the same fertilizer passes. I'm still saying there's going to be 2 passes of herbicide, either conventional or no till. So that's all the same. Everything washes out. And now we've gone to the positive. I'm going to go dive in real quickly. This is just a soils map of the 80 that we're going to talk about. We live in Iowa right here. As you can see, mostly silver loam. You guys have CSR in Wisconsin? It's called Corn Suitability Rating. No? Okay, and maybe most of you know what that is, but it gives us a guide. You really use that for, our numbers go from about 5 to 105 categories of CSO2. And that's basically on your soil types and productivity. And this farm is actually 65. We have a lot of farms that are 90 to 100 in our area. Tamer, we have some Tamer ground, which will be 100. But this particular 80 is probably a below average farm. Okay? So keep that in mind as we go along here too. This is not the most productive farm, and we'll talk about where we're at on yields. Okay, how we set this up, and a lot of times when I started doing this, I didn't expect to be presenting in front of groups of 100 or whatever people and sharing my data. That's one reason why I didn't want to share with people, because I was very, very inclusive, and I didn't want anybody to know what my business was. But this is one of the things that we set up correctly. When we started flying cover crops on, we actually took this 80 and we flew east and west. All the roads go north and south. We do all kinds of plot work here for Pioneer. We also do a lot of different other companies. And as you can see in these pictures, the south half has not gotten cover crops from the very beginning. North half has had cover crops in 2012. And you can see that the cover crop stands, because of the aerial application, is always the best. My son is he's analyzing analytics on taking all the yield data. So we took that north half over the last 7 years, because the first 2 years that I did cover crops, I did nothing. That's another story in itself, because it was dry in 2012, and the fall of 2013 was dry as well. So I didn't have any cover crops. So we started with 2015, 2021. If you look at the difference in yield, we're looking at a 7 bushel increase where the cover crop is compared to where it's not. On the bean side, we did the same thing. Compared to north and the south, we only end up with about a 1/2 bushel per acre advantage on the bean. This is almost contradictory to what Iowa State shows us. Where is not its head. But I don't understand this. I really don't know why this is happening on my farm or our farm. But that's what I found. Now, maybe it's because of the strip cropping. I don't know. That could be part of the reason why. And to get my numbers, I took the averages again over the 2-year average. I was getting $20.32 per year just by yield increases. Okay. Our historic soil test. 2 things come out of this slide is, 1, use consistent labs. The same labs would be very good for consistency, and then take more soil tests. I was again not going to present this, right? This is my data. I wasn't going to share this. So I was guilty of not taking enough soil tests, but I want to show a couple things what had happened. My organic matter was still going down. When did I start strip tilling? I remember this was 1999 around 2000. But as you can see, I had a 4% organic matter in 2003. I still went down to 3.1 in 2014. So when I was strip tilling, I was still eroding my soil organic matter. Sorry to tell you that, but I still was. And whether that, and sometimes Wayne Fredericks tells me that he's got an increase of 10% every year for the last 25 years. And that was without a lot of cover crop. It's mainly no-till and strip till. But it wasn't until I introduced the cover crops when I started seeing my organic matter go up. So when we equate, I took what our fertility prices were, how much ppm, you got to figure 2 pounds of P or 2 pounds of K for every part per million. As you can see, our fertility is pretty high. I want to maintain that to be able to do the yields. If you remember what our yields were, on this 65 CSR, we averaged for 7 years at 245 or 248, 241. My average yield on this farm last year was 265. We normally get 32 to 34 inches of rain per year. We get 18. When you're talking about sandy loam, I have very little tile on this farm because it's naturally drained. But I want to get back to soil organic real quick. This came from, first time I saw it was Doug Peterson came up with this, and I'm not disputing any of, for every 1% gain in soil organic matter, we end up with this nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium. You put today's prices in there, look at what that nets you. Just in the nutrients, it's worth $1,200. When I presented for the first time in 2014, those prices, it was $448, 1% organic. Now you got to keep that. This is just the nutrient level. This is what the nutrient price and what it's worth. But what else do you gain with 1% organic matter? Soil. Water holding capacity. How much? How much? Anybody know? An inch per 1%. So on every acre, I'm holding another 26 to 28,000 gallons of water. And when my watershed is in Rock Creek, it dumps into the Cedar River, the dump goes through Cedar Rapids, and they had that massive flood in 2009. This becomes a big issue. If we can hold another 28 to 30,000 gallons of water, and I don't have this in my equation at all. But if you add all those figures together, I know I'm going through this very quickly, organic matter, and I only went up 0.3% in 5 years. So I'm only gaining 0.06% per year. 0.06. I should get about at least a 10th. I'm at 6. But even at that small amount, that adds up to be $75 a year nutrient value. Okay? Now, of course, you do this. This is with cover crops, with herbicide termination. So we got to have the cost of cover crops, the burn down, and all that. So we're netting 53.85. Here, if we go to my Crimper Roller, which I hope to get to, take the same values that we're going to increase on the cover crop. We got to add in 2 Cripper Roller passes. That's the thing about Cripper Roller real quick. And I don't past time. My wife was looking at me, and also Rachel was talking to me. But it's very important. How many of you watch videos of Cripper Roller on YouTube? What's it look like? Beautiful, matted down, right? They never show you 2 days later. Where that ride comes back up at a 45-degree angle and keeps sucking water and nutrients. But anyway, if you can see this, we can take this up to 96, 94. This is where I want to end on. Is why. I want you to, I've done these presentations, you talk about all these benefits of why reduce tillage, why cover crops. But why did you do it? Why did you start? I bet if I asked every one of you in this room, there might be some differentiation, but there would be almost probably 50 different reasons why you did it. For you guys and gals to promote this in your area, you have to remember where you were at when you started. Unless you're one of those that had this epiphany that that all these conservation efforts is what I want to do and I have to do. But why did you start? Yes, you can answer that very good.
God wanted it that way.
God wanted it that way. That's a great answer. I don't think I've ever heard that one before, but I think I should hear it more. This is true. But please, there's one, I'm going to bring my wife again. Because I can give them all these numbers. I can show them what's happening in my fields. I always put this in there. But they still won't do it. They won't start. Why not?
Means you're a conservation.
That's part of it. That's true. And I'm glad I touched on it in the beginning because it's probably more than what we think it is. But there's a lot of fear. My wife, and then the question I would get is, how do we change that? Okay, I'm going to pick on husbands here, or significant other males. Have you ever, and I want to tell you my situation. One day we were eating at the dinner table. And I had this thought, I had this idea. I don't even remember what it was. We were going to do something different. I don't remember if it was about the farm or what it was. And I looked at Cindy and I said, well, I think we should do this. And she looks at me like, and says, I've been telling you that for months. That ever happened to you? I know it works the other way too, because I know that happens too. But what that tells me is that's how we got to work with some of these people that don't want to do this. We don't give up. We don't preach to them. We just do what we do. By example, we're going to get some of them. And other ones we just keep implying. Not too hard. And eventually, the only time I see new people start this process, whether it be a strip till or no till or cover crops, whatever it might be, is when they come to me and say, you know, I think cover crops is a good idea. It's like they had this great epiphany. But that's how it works. And I want to challenge you guys and gals today, because I'm preaching the choir. But for this to work, we have to remember where we came from. There's always a fear factor. Every time I made a step, and what I did, like Jeremy was, every time I was changed something, I didn't sleep for days. I did. And the question I always get asked, God, you've been doing this so many things, it's just like you don't want to stay where you're at. How can you be scared when you go to the next farm? But I do. These guys and gals, these producers, you know, we've been doing it the same for 150 years. It's not going to switch like that quickly. Yes, you have the early adopters or the innovators, and you are those. Okay? We were like that. Bob was like that in 2014 or 15 when we started the Watershed project, which we were involved in. I got Watershed really go, this is really going to fly. This is really going to get big. Our cover crop business was really good, taking off. And then it plateaus. The middle adopters are a little bit slower. And now I can tell you from the speaking engagements I've had over the last 2 months, the momentum is changing, it's shifting. Take advantage of it. Keep in front of them. And always do this. Have them commit. I saw Jimmy Chen, he's a professional rock climber. He ended his interview, I don't remember, 60 minutes or CBS North, something like whatever. He said, commit. And then figure it out. It's pretty accurate of rock climber, isn't it? There is no path to how to climb a mountain. The same way, some of us and some of the producers right now are trying to figure out how to do these practices before they even start. So no more of this trying stuff. I don't use that terminology anymore. You're going to commit on a small scale. We're not going to do the whole operation. We're going to commit. They're gonna make it happen because you know what? You don't have to figure it out. You guys can help them out. You guys know what you went through and what needs to be done to make it work. So please do that. Each of the end goals. Thank you very much.